The galaxy had always been a place of wonder and danger. Star systems teemed with life, civilizations rose and fell, and explorers sailed the black seas of space in ships powered by energy beyond imagination. For most species, the idea of danger came in the form of political disputes, trade wars, or the occasional rogue asteroid. But there was one threat that dwarfed all others: the Deathworlders. No one truly remembered the first time a Deathworlder ship appeared. Stories passed from system to system, each adding a little exaggeration, a little fear. What everyone remembered clearly was the fear. Deathworlders were different. They did not negotiate. They did not surrender. They destroyed. Entire civilizations could vanish in a matter of months if a Deathworlder fleet set its sights on them. Captain Lena Maris of the starship Pioneer stared out at the endless darkness of space, her fingers brushing the control panel as she thought about the reports they had just received. The Deathworlders were moving again, not randomly as they usually did, but with purpose. Their fleet was converging on a cluster of heavily defended star systems near the galactic midrim. "They're targeting strong systems," said Lieutenant Rayan, his voice low but tense. "They're not taking the easy prey this time." Lena's brow furrowed. "That's unusual. Deathworlders usually strike where resistance is weakest. Why would they change tactics now?" Ron shook his head. "No one knows, Captain. But every species in this sector should be on high alert. If they succeed here, nothing will stop them from moving inward." The Pioneer was not a warship. It was an exploration vessel designed for observation, mapping, and first contact. But humans had a reputation that even the Deathworlders could not ignore. They were daring, unpredictable, and curious in ways no other species dared to be, and that made them the perfect observers in a situation that had terrified the entire Galactic Council. "Send a report to the Council," Lena said, "and make sure to include the analysis of their trajectory. We need them to understand the situation before it's too late." Lieutenant Ron nodded. "Yes, Captain. But I must warn you, many of the Council members will dismiss this. They've always believed Deathworlders are unstoppable. Then we'll prove them wrong," Lena replied, her voice steady. Inside, however, she felt the same knot of fear that any human would feel. They were small. Their fleet was modest compared to what Deathworlders could summon. But humans had something many other species did not: creativity, adaptability, and courage. As the Pioneer moved closer to the cluster of systems, the crew could see the first signs of the Deathworlder advance. Massive warships, black and jagged, moved with deadly precision. Their surfaces shimmered with strange energy fields, and their weapons glowed with a light that promised destruction. Civilizations across the sector were sending desperate messages, warning each other, evacuating civilians, preparing defenses. And yet, in all this chaos, Lena could not ignore a certain curiosity in the Deathworlders' movement. "They are studying the systems," she said. "Look at the pattern. They are not just attacking, they are selecting." Ron frowned. "Studying or planning? Either way, it's bad news." Lena nodded. "Exactly. We need to know why." The Pioneer edged closer, using cloaking systems to remain invisible to the Deathworlders' sensors. From inside the ship, the crew monitored energy signatures, weapon calibrations, and fleet formations. Every piece of data was carefully logged and sent to the Council, but Lena suspected no one would take it seriously. Then the first encounter happened. One of the smaller star systems, inhabited by a species called the Virillians, was attacked without warning. Their defenses were strong, but the Deathworlders' assault was faster, smarter, and more precise than anything anyone had expected. Entire stations were disintegrated in minutes, and the Virillian ships were outmaneuvered at every turn. "We need to record everything," Lena ordered. "Every tactic they use, every formation, every weakness. This could be our only chance to learn how to resist them." Lieutenant Ron hesitated. "Are you saying we should engage?" Lena's eyes were steady. "Not engage, Ron. Observe. Understand. Humans survive not because we are the strongest, but because we are clever. And cleverness can win where brute force cannot." The Pioneer followed at a safe distance, watching as the Deathworlder fleet continued its advance. Crew members whispered in hushed tones, some with fear, others with excitement. They were witnessing history. For the first time, a human vessel had gotten close enough to study the most feared species in the galaxy without being destroyed. Hours passed. The crew mapped the fleet, noting every maneuver, every weapon charge, every shift in formation. And then, something even stranger happened. The Deathworlders hesitated. Lena's voice trembled slightly, but she did not let it show. Did you see that? They paused. For a moment, they stopped attacking. Why? Ron shook his head. Maybe it's a malfunction, or maybe they are calculating, Lena interrupted. They have never hesitated before. Every species they encounter, every system they assault, it's destruction without pause. If they are pausing now, it means we might finally see a crack in their armor. The Pioneer moved slightly closer, careful not to reveal itself. Lena felt a thrill she had never felt before. Fear and excitement mixed together in a strange, sharp taste. Humans had faced danger before, but nothing like this. Nothing that could erase entire civilizations in the blink of an eye. Suddenly, an alert sounded. A Deathworlder scout ship had detected something, possibly their anomaly scanners picking up the Pioneer. For a tense moment, the crew held their breath. Then the scout veered away, ignoring the humans entirely. They didn't attack, Ron whispered. Why? Because we are different, Lena said softly. They can sense we think differently. They respect intelligence. This is what they have never faced. Curiosity, courage, adaptability. She turned to her crew, eyes burning with determination. Take notes on everything. Record every decision they make, every hesitation, every attack. One day the galaxy will thank us for this. And maybe, just maybe, we can find a way to survive, no, thrive, against a species that has never been stopped. For the rest of the day, the Pioneer trailed the Deathworlder, fleet, careful, patient, observing. They saw precision strikes on outposts, clever flanking maneuvers, and moments of hesitation that no one else had ever recorded. Humans were learning, and learning quickly. At night, Lena walked alone in the observation deck, staring at the stars. She thought of the countless civilizations that had already fallen, the countless lives lost to the Deathworlders' relentless march. But she also thought of something new. Hope. Hope born of courage. Hope born of intellect. Hope born of a species that refused to accept fear as the ultimate weapon. This is only the beginning, she whispered to herself. The galaxy will remember the day humans dared to face the Deathworlders. And maybe, just maybe, we will be the ones who teach them that not every species can be destroyed. Below her, the crew worked tirelessly, documenting, observing, and preparing. Each human aboard the Pioneer knew the stakes. They were small, they were fragile, they were outmatched, and yet they were unbroken. The Deathworlders continued their march, unaware that this small human ship was studying them, learning from them and preparing for a day when the tables would turn. The first seeds of resistance had been planted, and on that day no one could have known that the galaxy was about to witness something it had never seen before, a species that refused to bow, a species that could change the myth of fear itself. And so the humans sailed on, fearless in the face of darkness, curious in the presence of terror, and determined to survive. The galaxy had long feared the Deathworlders, but for the first time, someone was watching. Someone was learning. And that someone was human. The galaxy had long whispered tales of the Deathworlders, tales of unstoppable ships, merciless warriors, and planets reduced to nothing but smoldering rock. Entire species shivered at the mention of their name, convinced that resistance was impossible. Yet for humans aboard the Starship Pioneer, fear had always been a challenge to be met head-on. Curiosity, intelligence, and daring courage had carried them through far worse dangers than most species dared to face. Captain Lena Maris sat in the observation deck, her eyes scanning the view screen as it displayed a small, neutral star system called Arden 6. Reports indicated that the Deathworlders were approaching this system in force. Arden 6 had no formal alliance with any major galactic power, yet it was heavily populated, rich in resources, and strategically located. Its defenses were modest but competent. For humans, it would serve as the perfect test. Observe the Deathworlders, in action at a manageable scale. Lieutenant Ron broke the tense silence. Captain, their fleet is already in orbit. The system's scanners are picking up dozens of large ships, and smaller strike crafts are deploying. Civilians are trying to evacuate, but it's chaos. We can't. Lena held up a hand. We're not here to fight, Ron. We're here to observe, to learn. Every move they make, every hesitation, every tactic could teach us something. If we panic now, we lose the advantage of knowledge. The Pioneer had the advantage of stealth technology. Its hull absorbed detection scans, and its engines emitted almost no signature. From this invisible vantage, the human crew could watch the Deathworlders prepare for an assault. The fleet descended slowly, methodical, and terrifying in its precision. Lena had watched simulations before, but nothing compared to the reality of a Deathworlder fleet moving in three-dimensional space, faster than any human mind could follow. Ships pivoted, weapons charged, and energy fields flickered in response to unseen signals. They're targeting the planetary defense arrays first, said Rayon. Then the civilian habitats. Standard procedure. Lena shook her head slightly. Not exactly. Look closer. They're bypassing certain arrays. Some smaller defense satellites they leave untouched. They're calculating, not just destroying. There's a pattern here, a selection. The observation screens displayed a human-designed overlay, showing projected trajectories of Deathworlder attacks. Every ship seemed to respond to another's movement, adjusting in real time. Even the Pioneer's advanced computers struggled to keep up. Ron's voice was low. They've never been observed doing this before, never thinking like this. Exactly, Lena replied. Which is why we're watching. If they are adapting, we need to know how. Understanding this behavior is the only way to survive. The Deathworlders began their assault on Arden 6. The human crew witnessed their efficiency in horror and awe. Entire planetary defense stations were destroyed almost simultaneously. Smaller ships tried to intercept, but the Deathworlders anticipated every move. It was a perfect demonstration of their power, and a chilling reminder of what humanity faced. Then something unexpected happened. A group of human pilots who had accompanied the Pioneer in a separate scouting vessel called the Hawk decided to attempt a maneuver no other species would dare. Using the asteroid belt surrounding the Arden 6 system, they planned to lure a squadron of Deathworlder ships into a trap. Captain Lena had not authorized the maneuver, but she trusted her crew's judgment. Human pilots were known for daring, for taking risks no other species would consider. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it failed spectacularly. The Hawk flew close to the edge of the asteroid belt. Its engines remained silent, its trajectory almost invisible. Behind them, Deathworlder scout ships detected the movement and gave chase. The humans' plan was simple in theory. Weave through the dense field of asteroids, using their smaller size and agility to their advantage, while luring the Deathworlders into a narrow channel where their larger ships could not maneuver as easily. Remember, Lena reminded them via encrypted comms, this is observation first. Engage only if necessary. Record everything. Learn from every reaction. The human pilots smiled, tension mixing with exhilaration. They were fearless in the face of danger because they knew that cleverness could outweigh size. As the chase unfolded, the Deathworlders adapted. Their ship slowed, hesitated, and attempted to calculate the human movements. And that hesitation was exactly what the humans were hoping for. A massive Deathworlder warship entered the asteroid field too quickly and became wedged between large rocks, unable to move without risk of damage. Another ship fired in frustration, destroying some asteroids, but it could not reach the humans. From the Pioneer, Lena watched in awe. They are hesitating. They are calculating. They have never done this before. Ron nodded. Humans have forced them to think differently. This is something new for them. The humans maneuvered expertly through the asteroid field, using every ounce of skill to avoid collisions and to bait the Deathworlders further. Every move was recorded, every reaction noted. For the first time in history, a Deathworlder squadron had been slowed, manipulated, and resisted by a smaller, clever species. After hours of careful observation and daring maneuvers, the Deathworlders retreated, not entirely defeated, but unwilling to risk further losses or complications. The human crew exhaled as one, their tension replaced by exhilaration. They had done what no other species had ever done. They had survived a direct encounter and even influenced the behavior of the galaxy's most feared predators. Captain Lena addressed her crew. Today, we did not win by firepower. We won by intelligence, by strategy, and by courage. This is how humans survive. This is how humans will change. The story of the galaxy. The crew cheered softly, careful not to break stealth. For the first time, hope stirred in their hearts. Humans had shown that even the unstoppable could be challenged. Even the terrifying could hesitate. And even in the face of overwhelming odds, cleverness and bravery could make a difference. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, word of the skirmish began to spread. Other species, previously paralyzed by fear, whispered among themselves. If humans could resist, maybe, just maybe, resistance was possible. Captain Lena knew that this was only the beginning. The Deathworlders were not defeated. Far from it. They would return, stronger, smarter, and more determined. But humans had learned something vital. Fear was not absolute. Knowledge, creativity, and courage could create a foothold, even against the mightiest adversary. For days afterward, the Pioneer continued its observation. Every reaction from the Deathworlders, every subtle shift in formation, and every hesitation was carefully logged. Humans studied their energy patterns, their communication methods, and even the way their ships moved in response to obstacles. They did not yet understand all of it, but they were learning faster than anyone else. Lena also considered another aspect, the Deathworlders' curiosity. They had never hesitated before. Their instinct was to destroy, to dominate. But humans had forced them to pause, to think, to consider. That alone was revolutionary. Other species had cowered, surrendered, or fled. Humans had faced them and emerged not only intact but with knowledge and insight. Late at night, Lena walked the observation deck, gazing at the distant stars. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, and humans were a small, fragile species in comparison to the Deathworlders. Yet, something inside her felt unstoppable. Humans had an advantage no other species possessed: adaptability, ingenuity, and courage. This is only the beginning, she whispered to herself. We are small, but we are clever. We are fragile, but we are brave. And one day the galaxy will remember that humans dared to stand against what no one else could face. She returned to the command center and addressed her crew. Tomorrow, we continue our observations. We will refine our tactics. We will prepare. Because the Deathworlders will return. And when they do, the galaxy will need humans to lead the charge. Not with brute strength, but with the one thing they cannot predict: intelligence and courage. The crew nodded, eyes bright with determination. For the first time, they felt a power beyond their weapons. The power of human ingenuity, the power of strategy, and the courage to face even the most terrifying threat. And so, as the Pioneer drifted through the quiet void beyond Arden 6, humanity's legend began, not yet recognized by the galaxy at large, not yet celebrated in stories or myths, but growing with each observation, each daring maneuver, and each moment of courage. The first contact had been made, and it had changed everything. The Deathworlders had arrived, and humans had survived. Not by strength alone, not by firepower, but by daring, intelligence, and the courage to challenge the unstoppable. For the first time, a small species had proven that even the galaxy's most feared predators could hesitate, and the seeds of a legend had been planted, one that every species would remember for generations to come. The galaxy was changing. Word of the human encounters with the Deathworlders spread faster than anyone could have predicted. Whispered rumors traveled from system to system. A small, fragile species had faced the unstoppable Deathworlders and survived. Not only survived, they had influenced the enemy, forced them to pause, to hesitate, to think. Captain Lena Maris watched the reports come in aboard the Pioneer. Communications from distant species reached them, some in shock, others in disbelief. Traders, scientists, and diplomats all asked the same question. How had a human crew survived the Deathworlders' assault? Lena sat back in her chair, fingers tapping lightly on the console. They are listening, Ron, she said quietly to her lieutenant. Other species are paying attention. They've lost faith in fear. Humans have shown them hope. Ron leaned forward, studying the latest data. It's incredible, Captain. Systems that had surrendered months ago are now mobilizing. They're sending patrol ships, fortifying defenses, and even coordinating with human intelligence. Your crew's actions have sparked a shift across multiple sectors. Lena nodded. Hope spreads faster than fear if someone dares to show it. The humans were not done yet. They had learned from their first encounter that the Deathworlders could hesitate, that even the most terrifying species could be influenced by intelligence and strategy. Using that insight, Lena began a plan that would require the cooperation of multiple species. The first step was communication. Humans were not the fastest species in terms of technology, but they had ingenuity. Diplomat Mara Klein was tasked with sending messages to the neighboring systems, reaching out not with threats, but with strategy and guidance. We do not ask for loyalty, Mara explained to the human crew. We ask for courage, for intelligence, and for unity. Fear has ruled for too long. Together we can show even the Deathworlders that the galaxy cannot be dominated so easily. The messages were received cautiously at first. Many species had been broken by the Deathworlders' past attacks. Their worlds had been destroyed, their people scattered, yet humans had survived. They had observed, they had adapted. And for the first time, other species dared to believe that resistance was possible. A group of systems, including the Varelians, the Althari, and the Kendrax, began coordinating with human strategists. They shared maps, fleet positions, and intelligence, creating the first interspecies network designed specifically to counter the Deathworlders. It was unprecedented. The galaxy had never seen such cooperation. Captain Lena knew that information alone would not be enough. The Deathworlders were still a terrifying force. Strategy had to be combined with audacity. She gathered her senior officers on the Pioneer for a briefing. The Deathworlders have never faced a united front, Lena said, pointing at the holographic display of their fleet movements. They have always relied on fear and overwhelming power. They have never seen a species, let alone multiple species, coordinate with intelligence, creativity, and courage. That will be our advantage. Lieutenant Ron frowned. It's risky, Captain. They are unpredictable, and we have no idea how they will react to this level of coordination. One mistake and entire fleets could be destroyed. Lena smiled faintly. That's why humans do what others cannot. We take risks. We learn, we adapt, and we survive. This is our chance to prove that fear is not absolute, that courage and strategy can change the galaxy. Meanwhile, in a quiet sector far from human observation, the Deathworlders convened their leaders. The pause that humans had observed during the attack on Arden 6 had not gone unnoticed. Commanders debated strategy, something rarely needed among their ranks. They hesitate, one leader growled, its voice vibrating through the comms. The humans, they are not like other species. They do not flee. They do not submit. They think, they adapt. Another leader hissed, it is dangerous to underestimate them. They are small, yes, but clever. There is a spark in them that we do not understand. For the first time, the Deathworlders faced uncertainty. They had never encountered a species that could survive direct engagement and learn from it. Every other species had crumbled under their power. Every other species had been predictable. Humans were neither. Back on the Pioneer, Lena prepared for the next step. She needed to test how far the Deathworlders' hesitation could be stretched. She called a meeting with Mara Klein and the tactical officers. "We need to provoke a response without direct engagement," Lena explained. "We need them to show us their limitations. The galaxy needs to see that even they can be challenged." The plan was simple in concept, but dangerous in execution. A small human vessel would enter a system under Deathworlder observation, not to attack, but to present itself as a target. Sensors and signals would make the Deathworlders believe that a larger fleet was moving in coordination, while in reality, the humans relied on speed, stealth, and clever maneuvers. "Essentially, we are bait," Ron summarized. "Yes," Lena replied, "but we are bait with brains, and brains can beat brawn if we play it right." The operation began. The human ship Hawk, guided by some of the most daring pilots, slipped into a Deathworlder-monitored system. Sensors detected them immediately, as expected. The Deathworlder ships moved to intercept, but instead of direct attack, they hesitated. Every move the humans made was calculated. They used decoys, feigned retreats, and navigated through asteroid fields and gravitational anomalies. Each tactic forced the Deathworlders to adjust, to rethink, to pause. For hours, the small human crew remained just ahead of the Deathworlder fleet, testing their reactions, documenting their strategies, and learning every weakness. From the Pioneer, Lena monitored the operation with intense focus. "Notice their hesitation," she said. "Every time we force them to adapt, we learn. They are thinking. They are not the unstoppable force they were thought to be." Ron shook his head in disbelief. "I never thought I would see this. Humans are remarkable. They can make the Deathworlders think." Lena smiled faintly. "That is our gift. Courage and intelligence combined. Other species fight with numbers. Humans fight with imagination and strategy, and imagination cannot be destroyed." After a tense 12-hour engagement, the Deathworlders withdrew, not defeated, not destroyed, but unwilling to risk further losses. Humans had done more than survive. They had influenced the enemy, proven that hesitation was possible, and inspired other species to believe in resistance. In the following days, a new energy spread across the galaxy. Systems that had lived in fear began building alliances. Traders, scientists, and explorers coordinated with humans. The idea that the Deathworlders were unstoppable began to fade. Stories of human bravery and intelligence spread like wildfire. Tales of clever maneuvers, audacious decisions, and fearless pilots became legends whispered in every sector. Captain Lena addressed her crew on the Pioneer, her voice steady and proud. "Today, we have shown the galaxy that courage matters, that intelligence matters, that even the most feared species can hesitate when faced with unpredictability and daring. Humans are small, yes, but we are capable of greatness, and the galaxy will remember that." Mara Klein added, "This is more than strategy. This is inspiration. Other species see that resistance is possible, that fear is not the ultimate weapon, and we are the spark." Lena nodded. "We are the spark. And a spark can start a fire." The Deathworlders, meanwhile, had begun to reconsider their approach. They had always relied on fear, on overwhelming force, and on terror to dominate. But humans had changed the rules. A species that could think, adapt, and inspire others had entered the equation. That simple fact was dangerous to their entire strategy. "They are different," the Deathworlder commander repeated. "They do not submit. They do not surrender. They force us to pause. We must reconsider." For the first time, humans had not just survived. They had become a threat the Deathworlders could not fully understand. And that threat was not based on size or firepower. It was based on intelligence, creativity, and courage. Back on the Pioneer, Lena watched the stars, thinking of what lay ahead. The Deathworlders would return, stronger, more focused, more dangerous. But humans had something no other species had ever relied on in the past, a belief in themselves, a belief in strategy, and the courage to face what others feared. "This is just the beginning," she said softly to herself. "The galaxy is learning. The Deathworlders are learning. And humans are about to change everything." Across countless star systems, species that had once cowered now dared to organize. Fleets coordinated, defenses were strengthened, and in secret, humans shared knowledge, teaching allies how to move with intelligence, how to fight with courage, and how to survive when others would fail. The turning point had arrived. Humans had shown that even in the face of the galaxy's greatest terror, fear could be challenged, courage could triumph, and intelligence could turn the tide. The legend was beginning. Not yet written in history books, not yet celebrated in songs, but already alive in whispers, in hope and in daring. The first cracks in the Deathworlders' myth of invincibility had appeared, and humans were at the center. For the first time, in recorded history, the galaxy dared to imagine a future where the Deathworlders could be resisted, where courage and strategy could make a difference, where the smallest species could inspire the largest to act. And it all began with humans. The galaxy had never witnessed anything like it. Humans, small and fragile compared to most species, were now at the center of a coalition that dared to resist the Deathworlders. The news of the humans' first encounters had spread like wildfire, and systems that had once surrendered in fear were now standing together. Traders, scientists, diplomats, and military officers worked side by side, united by a single goal: survival. Captain Lena Maris stood on the bridge of the Pioneer, her eyes scanning the holographic display of the approaching Deathworlder fleet. This was no small engagement. Hundreds of ships, massive warships bristling with weapons, advanced technology, and terrifying energy shields, were moving toward the Erythros system, a strategically vital cluster that controlled access to several neighboring sectors. "This is it," Lena said softly. Her voice carried a quiet determination that was almost palpable. "We either stand together, or the Deathworlders march unchecked. Today we prove that courage, intelligence, and unity matter more than fear." Lieutenant Ron studied the holographic display, tracing the paths of incoming ships. "Captain, the Deathworlders have never faced this level of coordination before. Even so, their fleet is enormous. They could destroy the coalition before we make any real impact." "Then we make every move count," Lena replied. "Every human ship, every allied vessel, every tactic. They must see that we are unpredictable, clever, and united." Allies had arrived from several systems. The Varelians brought fast attack ships capable of weaving through the tightest asteroid fields. The Althari contributed shielded carriers designed to absorb damage. The Kendrax provided long-range artillery platforms. But it was the humans who coordinated the effort, using intelligence, daring maneuvers, and careful observation of the Deathworlders' past behavior to guide the entire coalition. The moment of engagement arrived. From the edges of the system, the first Deathworlder ships appeared, black and jagged against the void of space. Their weapons glowed ominously, energy rippling across their hulls. Most species would have fled. Humans did not. "Remember," Lena instructed, "we are not just fighting. We are showing them that even the unstoppable can be challenged. Every action must be precise, every move calculated, every opportunity exploited." The Deathworlders advanced, expecting an easy victory. They were not used to resistance, and certainly not resistance led by humans. Their initial attacks were precise, targeting weaker ships first, hoping to scatter the coalition quickly. But humans had anticipated this. The Pioneer moved with careful precision, using its stealth technology to guide Allied ships into advantageous positions. Holographic decoys were deployed to confuse the Deathworlders' sensors. Smaller human ships darted in and out of asteroid fields, drawing Deathworlder fire and creating openings for Allied fleets to strike. The Deathworlders hesitated. For the first time, their usual tactics, overwhelming force and terror, were not enough. The humans' strategy forced them to adjust constantly, a process they had rarely encountered in their history of conquest. Lena watched the battle unfold, adrenaline mixing with determination.
"They are calculating, Ron," she said. "Every hesitation is an opportunity. Every pause is a weakness we can exploit." Ron nodded, eyes wide. "Humans are remarkable. Even against them, we find opportunities." The turning point
Came when Captain Lena made a bold decision. The Deathworlder flagship, massive and heavily armed, had moved into a position that threatened the entire coalition. Destroying it with conventional attack was impossible. Instead, Lena devised a plan that relied on audacity rather than brute force. The human strike team, led by Lena herself aboard the Hawk, would enter the Deathworlder formation using gravitational anomalies and narrow asteroid channels. The maneuver was risky. One wrong calculation and the ship would be destroyed. But the reward was immense. By targeting the flagship's energy relay points, they could disrupt its control over the fleet. "Prepare for the maneuver," Lena commanded, her voice calm but firm. "Every system ready, every crew member alert. This is the moment humans prove themselves." The Hawk and accompanying human ships moved at incredible speed, weaving through obstacles with precision. The Deathworlders attempted to intercept, but the humans' unpredictability forced them to hesitate. Weapons fired, shields flared, and energy fields rippled through space, but the human strike team remained undeterred. Lena focused on the flagship's energy relays, guiding the ships closer with calculated maneuvers. One by one, the relays were disrupted, causing the Deathworlder flagship to lose coordination with its fleet. The smaller ships faltered, confused by the sudden shift in leadership signals. Across the coalition, Allied fleets seized the opportunity. Varelian ships launched fast attacks, Althari carriers provided cover, and Kendrax artillery struck precise targets. The Deathworlders, for the first time in recorded history, were being outmaneuvered, outthought, and resisted on every front. "Keep pushing," Lena urged. "Do not let them recover. Show them that strategy matters more than fear." The Deathworlders attempted to regroup, but the humans' planning had accounted for their possible responses. Each fleet movement, each tactical choice, and each daring maneuver by human pilots created openings that allies exploited immediately. Hours passed, and the tide of battle shifted. The Deathworlders, frustrated by their inability to dominate, began to retreat. Not all ships withdrew, but enough to signal a turning point. For the first time, their myth of invincibility had been challenged, and they knew it. Across the galaxy, species that had once lived in fear began to celebrate in small ways. Stories of human courage and leadership spread quickly. Even the most war-torn systems began to hope. Resistance was no longer impossible. Humans had shown that intelligence, courage, and unity could turn the tide against the most fearsome enemy in history. Captain Lena addressed the coalition via secure comms. "Today, we have done more than survive. We have shown that even the most powerful cannot dominate without challenge. We have proven that strategy, courage, and collaboration matter. Let this be a lesson to all species. Fear is not absolute. And humans are a spark that can ignite the galaxy." The human crew cheered, exhausted but elated. They had faced the Deathworlders head-on and survived. They had inspired a coalition, turned fear into hope, and proven that intelligence and courage could overcome raw power. In the aftermath, as ships repaired and crews rested, Lena reflected on what had occurred. The Deathworlders were not destroyed, but they had learned something vital. Humans were not like any other species they had faced. They could not be controlled by fear. They could not be predicted by power alone. They were clever, brave, and capable of inspiring others to resist. For the first time in history, the Deathworlders faced a species that had the potential to change the balance of the galaxy. They had encountered hesitation, unpredictability, and courage, and it had shaken them. "We have begun something greater than survival. Lena said quietly to Ryan as they watched the stars. We have begun the story of hope, and the galaxy will remember it. Ron smiled faintly. Humans are remarkable. Even against the unstoppable, we can make a difference. Lena nodded. Yes, and it's only the beginning. The Deathworlders will return, but we will be ready. Not just with ships and weapons, but with strategy, courage, and intelligence. And one day that will make all the difference. As night fell across the Erythros system, the coalition ships remained in orbit, vigilant but inspired. For the first time, the galaxy saw that fear could be challenged, that courage could prevail, that humans, small, fragile, but clever and daring, could change the course of history. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. Yet hope had been planted, and as humans celebrated quietly, they knew that their actions had already begun to shape a new legend, a story every species would remember for generations. The Deathworlders had learned a lesson they would never forget. Humans were not just survivors. Humans were catalysts. Humans were the spark that could turn fear into hope, and the galaxy would never be the same again. And above all, Captain Lena Maris knew one thing. The Great Stand had proven what humans had always believed. Courage, intelligence, and unity were more powerful than fear, more powerful than firepower, and more powerful than any myth. The galaxy was quiet, but not in the way it had been for centuries. The silence that followed the Great Stand at Erythros was charged with possibility. For the first time in recorded history, the unstoppable Deathworlders had been forced to retreat, not because they were destroyed, but because they had met a force they could not easily dominate. Captain Lena Maris stood on the observation deck of the Pioneer, looking at the stars that stretched endlessly before her. The battle had ended hours ago, but the weight of what had been accomplished pressed on her. She had expected victory and survival, yes, but not in creating hope, not in changing the way the galaxy thought about fear. Lieutenant Ryan approached, his voice subdued but excited. Captain, reports are coming in from multiple sectors. Civilizations that had hidden in fear for decades are now rallying. Fleets are coordinating. Defensive networks are being strengthened. We've inspired them. Lena nodded slowly. We've done more than survive. We've changed the narrative. The galaxy is learning that courage and intelligence can stand against even the most terrifying force. Humans did not just fight. They showed others how to fight. That is the beginning of a legend. From the Pioneer, they could see the remnants of the Deathworlder fleet retreating through a distant wormhole. Their massive ships, once symbols of terror and invincibility, moved carefully now, wary of every possible ambush, every trick the humans might have left behind. For the Deathworlders, retreat was unfamiliar. They had never been opposed by a species that thought differently, that acted unpredictably, and that refused to yield. In their history, fear had been enough, but humans had introduced a variable they could not calculate: imagination, courage, and strategy combined. Across the galaxy, other species were beginning to understand this. The Varelians reinforced their fleets and sent messages to their neighbors, sharing what they had learned from human tactics. The Althari built defensive platforms inspired by human ingenuity, and the Kendraks adapted their artillery in ways humans had suggested. Cooperation, coordination, and intelligence were spreading like wildfire. Captain Lena knew the most important work was not just military, it was diplomacy and guidance. She tasked Mara Klein with traveling to key systems, sharing strategies, and inspiring species to organize, not in fear but in hope. This is how humans change the galaxy, Lena said during a strategy meeting. Not through dominance, not through destruction, but through courage, intelligence, and the willingness to stand when others flee. That is how legends are born. Mara nodded. They will tell stories of today, stories that will inspire future generations. They will remember humans not just as survivors, but as a symbol, a spark that lit the fire of resistance. Back on Erythros, the first signs of rebuilding began. Human engineers and pilots coordinated with allied species to repair, stations, aid civilians, and ensure that no system would be left vulnerable again. Every effort reinforced the message. Survival was possible and hope was contagious. Meanwhile, the Deathworlders debated in their command centers. For the first time, their leaders considered something other than conquest. They had been challenged, surprised, and influenced by a species they had underestimated. They hesitate, the Deathworlder High Commander admitted to the Council. The humans, they are unlike any species we have faced. They do not yield. They force us to calculate, to pause. They think differently. We cannot control them with fear alone. Another leader growled, "They inspire others. That is dangerous. If we continue our assaults without adapting, we risk losing more than ships. We risk losing influence across systems. They are unpredictable. They cannot be ignored." The Deathworlders had learned something vital. Humans were not like other species. They were small, fragile, yet brilliant, courageous, and capable of inspiring entire civilizations to act. That knowledge, terrifying as it was, ensured that humans would never be underestimated again. Across the galaxy, systems celebrated cautiously, aware that the Deathworlders were still a threat. But for the first time, they felt something they had not felt in generations: hope. Stories of human courage spread quickly. Pilots who had flown daring maneuvers became heroes. Strategists who had coordinated allied fleets became legends. And Captain Lena Maris, who had led humanity in its first great confrontation with the Deathworlders, became a symbol for the galaxy's new era. In communications across sectors, leaders shared the same message. The humans of the Pioneer had shown the path. Intelligence, bravery, and cooperation could challenge the unstoppable. And in every retelling, humans were at the center. A species that had refused to bow, a species that had made even Deathworlders pause, and a species that had shown the galaxy the power of hope. Captain Lena watched as a small fleet of Virilian ships departed, carrying engineers and pilots to other systems to share human strategies. She turned to Ryan, a quiet smile on her face. "They are learning. Systems that hid in fear are now acting. That is the true victory." Ryan nodded. "Humans have done more than fight. We've changed the way the galaxy thinks. Fear is no longer the ultimate weapon." "Yes," Lena agreed. "Fear can be overcome. Courage, intelligence, and unity are stronger. And that is the legacy we leave behind." In the following weeks, the story spread even further. Traders told it in bustling spaceports. Children heard it in schools. Pilots whispered it in quiet docking bays before taking off on long voyages. Humans had become a living legend, the spark that lit hope in even the most desperate hearts. The myth of the day the Deathworlders stopped playing nice grew with every retelling. Some said humans had faced impossible odds and survived by luck. Others said it was their intelligence, their cunning, their creativity. And all were correct. Humans had combined every strength they possessed: courage, curiosity, strategy, and adaptability, and turned the tide against the galaxy's greatest terror. Captain Lena Maris stood once more on the observation deck, looking at the stars. She thought of every human pilot, every engineer, every strategist who had risked everything for survival. They had not only defended the galaxy, they had inspired it. "This is the beginning of a new era," she whispered. "The galaxy will remember this day. Humans will be remembered not just as survivors, but as a species that dared to stand when others fled. That dared to fight with their minds and hearts, not just their weapons. That dared to create hope where fear once ruled." Lieutenant Ran joined her, his eyes reflecting the starlight. "Do you think they'll ever forget, Captain?" "They will never forget," Lena replied firmly. "Every species, every civilization, every generation will pass down the story. Humans showed the galaxy that even the most feared predator can hesitate when faced with courage and intelligence. That is a myth worth remembering." The Deathworlders retreated to the far reaches of the galaxy, plotting their next move, but with a newfound respect for the humans. They had encountered a species that could not be intimidated, that could not be controlled by terror, and that could unite others to resist. That knowledge changed them forever, and in doing so, cemented humans as a legend in the galactic consciousness. In the years that followed, the story of humans and the Great Stand spread across stars and systems. Young pilots studied it, strategists analyzed it, and ordinary citizens told it in tales that would last for centuries. Humanity's courage had become a beacon, a symbol of what any species could achieve when intelligence, bravery, and cooperation combined. And the galaxy remembered. Every species in every corner of space knew the tale of the humans who refused to bow. They remembered the day when Deathworlders stopped playing nice, and the myth of humanity's courage and cleverness became part of every culture, every story, and every lesson passed down through generations. Captain Lena Maris looked out at the galaxy one last time before leaving the bridge. She smiled, knowing that humans had not just survived, they had changed the future. The story of courage, intelligence, and unity had begun, and humans would be at its center forever. The galaxy had learned something it had never known before. Fear is temporary, but courage and wisdom endure. And in every tale, humans were the heroes, the spark that changed the course of history, and the species that proved myths were meant to be rewritten. The legend of the day the Deathworlders stopped playing nice would live forever.